today we're catching up with Nick Cavaness, and I was just absolutely delighted when his face popped up on the screen. Haven't talked to him, seen him in quite a while, so I'm really excited to hear about what he's been doing since graduation. So thank you, Nick, for joining us today. And we're just going to start with you sharing a little bit about your high school experience.
Okay, great. Happy to be here. Glad you reached out, and great to see you as well. And from high school experience, Marion, Illinois, had a wonderful high school experience. And not just saying this because I'm on here right now, but FBLA was a huge part of that, and Hudge's classes. And I believe that I took every single one of Mrs. Hudgens' classes and advanced classes throughout my high school career.
You even survived the horror. We just had started our first AP Econ classes ever.
And it was an early bird class.
To make it worse, it was early bird. Yes, which the kids today don't even know what early bird is. But that we got here at what, like 7:10. Well, we're supposed to get here at 7:10. A lot of people rolled in about 7:30. That was brutal. So you were a good soldier.
It was great, and I mean, it was a great primer for what was to come for me. And it really, between those classes and between FBLA, got me kind of in gear for what was to come in terms of my business path and career path after that. And I mean, in terms of highlights, and we always come back to it, myself and Chris Koshner, who was also there, and Felipe, but our trip to nationals for FBLA was out in LA. That was awesome.
That was my first trip to California, but also first time I took any students to California. We haven't back since then, but it was a great experience. It was just one of my favorite trips ever, honestly. Even I talked to Chris the other day, even in spite of the fact that we left a drawstring bag with like almost all the guys' wallets on a public transportation bus.
Yes.
We recovered them. Like, that was a miracle. Everybody's stuff was still in the wallets, and we got to fly home, and no one lost any money. But anyway, definitely one of the best trips I've ever been on with FBLA. It was so much fun.
It was great.
You were a golfer too, right?
I was. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Was on the golf team for all 4 years, and with Mr. Stout as the coach, and then actually continued on for a year after that in college, and played a year in college.
That's cool. And what year did you graduate?
Graduated in 2010.
Oh my goodness. I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it's been 10 years. I know. Crazy. I can still hear in my head Adam Berge telling me, take care of little Nikki Hudge. And
you know what?
He
still says that today.
Oh my goodness. So after graduation, would you mind to share what you've been doing for the last 10 years? Like, what your career path has looked like?
Yeah. So I had gone to school went to Maryville University first, played golf, and had then gone to Murray State down in Kentucky, and went and majored in finance. And so my early on kind of aspirations were to do something in finance, possibly broking. But, as I went on, had found an opportunity within the insurance realm. And so my summer of my sophomore year, I had taken an internship with a company by the name of Arthur J. Gallagher in Chicago. And so I did a summer internship for them that year, and then came back for a second year between my junior and senior year, and then ended up coming on full time after school. So graduated in 2014 and came on full time a few months after that. And so, I mean, the internship was huge. It was a big reason that I started the company. They did a great job, and I mean, I think it's imperative to get those experiences. Internships are great. I think that I don't regret going for 2 years and then starting full time by any means. But I think that, in chats with my little brother, he'd done a couple different internships. I think that it's also great to explore your options and start internships as quickly as you can. And I mean, most days they're paid now, which is good. But I mean, even unpaid internships are great. And really, you want to get out there and figure out what it is that you want to do. And getting into internships really kind of gives you a feel for those industries. So if there's a couple that you're interested in, I think it's good to, take those summers and maybe bounce around to a couple different ones, because
Yeah,
there's nothing to say that they won't want you back if you do a good enough job come after school.
very true. Internships are valuable.
They are very much so.
And that continues to come up when I talk to people. So how long were you in Chicago with Gallagher?
So I was in Chicago with Gallagher from 2014 until, let's see, really I was there full time until about 2018, so about 4 years. I did a very short stint in London for a London program,
Cool.
because insurance overall kind of was birthed out of London, out of England, insuring ships back during the East India Trade Company. They were insuring ships and all those shipments, and so that's kind of where insurance was birthed, and it's still to this day like the largest, one of the largest centrally located marketplaces for insurance. And the cool thing is, there for anyone that is interested to look into Lloyd's of London, it's a giant building downtown London where it's an open trade. It looks like a stock market trading floor. And there's many different floors, and they do things very, very differently there. Whereas we transact over the phone and through email a lot, and we do a lot of face-to-face as well. There, if you have a risk, you have to walk and you queue instead of standing in line there, and you queue at their desks, and you wait in line effectively to talk to these underwriters, so you can effectively sell them on these risks and get them to put their capacity on the line. It's
Wow.
interesting. It's an
Wow.
archaic way of doing things, and they would not like it if I said this, but it's terribly inefficient. But there's something to say for tradition, and it's neat. It was a great experience.
So they're like embracing the ancient art there. They're kind of
Ex-
holding on to that. That's really neat. I didn't know
yep.
about that. That's
Yeah,
really cool. So
it's
you
quite
were
cool.
in London and now you're in San Francisco.
In San Francisco. So moved out here in 2018, still with the same company. And
Okay.
so to backtrack a little bit, so you've got Arthur J. Gallagher, who's an insurance brokerage, like a global insurance brokerage. And then within Arthur J. Gallagher, you've got a few different divisions. And so you've got your property casualty division, where it's the insurance brokers that you would kind of think of, where they're selling directly to a client. There's a business, company ABC, that has a large portfolio of real estate. And so they may be selling directly to them for all different lines of insurance. And then there's the benefit side of thing, like healthcare benefits. There's the claim side. And then there's my division, which is called RPS, which is the wholesale side of insurance. And so the wholesale side of insurance, effectively what it is we specialize in specific lines of coverage on the property and casualty side. And in short, it's the higher risk business. And so whereas you've got your normal like retail insurance agent, that they have markets that they can place business with, coverage with, but in certain cases it might be too risky for the markets that they have access to. So then they bring us on as a consultant slash broker, and we go to our markets, which we have much more markets to then take on higher risk. And instead of one market taking on the entire risk, we find many different markets similar to Lloyd's, where they all put a little bit of their capacity or at risk on that insured portfolio.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you're matching people up. There are people that have a need
Yep.
for the insurance, and then you're finding people that are willing to say, yeah, I'll take that risk, and
Exactly.
compensate them for being willing to take the risk.
Exactly. And so, and I mean, the reason that it kind of comes to us is you may have, so I specifically focus on property. And so there's many different lines that you can focus in, but, the reason it would come to us is maybe that the insured properties have had losses, like many different losses, whether it be fire or other perils, or they've got a significant exposure in Florida. So you've got hurricanes,
Gotcha.
or significant exposure here in California for earthquakes, or the central states for hail. And so that's a big driver. And then furthermore, there are, specific risks that may, like manufacturing, or if you're forging, you've got very high risk. The one of the examples, which is actually kind of true in certain cases, that was always used as an intern. It's like, we look to insure fireworks factories on a cliff. High risk.
Yeah.
And so actually right now it's kind of crazy because that's hitting close to home because I'm currently working on a factory that produces missiles for our military,
Wow.
government contractor. And to make matters even worse, they're in the mountains in Northern California. So there's a significant wildfire risk.
Wow.
So it's
That's
all kinds of fun.
yeah. So the risks we're doing lunch. We're cleaning out our rooms today.
Oh,
And
nice.
we're doing a group lunch order. So teachers' priorities never change. Like we got to get that lunchtime in. So yeah. So I cannot imagine um, the process for assessing
Mhm.
the risk value. Like so do you have to look at like what the fair market value of the property itself is, or
Correct.
do you have to like project out the potential damage to people working or housed there? Like there's probably a lot to it.
Well, there's many different factors that kind of come into play. And the reason that I like, so it's another like middleman position, right? It's where I come in, right? And so the reason that I like what I do or our portion of the industry is there's the sales role. There's a lot of social interaction. Um, but then there's also the technical side of things. And so to your point, like we have to assess the risk and figure out which markets would be more inclined to write something like this. But at the end of the day, my job is more on the broking side. So I'm not necessarily underwriting the risk, but I have a good idea as to maybe what it would go for from a price perspective.
Gotcha.
And then so I would work with the underwriters of the markets who then they
Okay.
model the risk and they're actually the ones that
Gotcha.
are on the which is another very interesting side of things. And if there is anyone interested in insurance, I think it's a huge industry and it's a lot. There's so many different sides of it from a retail perspective, the Main Street kind of thing to big business, to the
Uh-huh.
brokerage side, to the underwriting side. And then, even further on the underwriting side, if you like math, you can become an actuary
Yeah.
and the actuarial sciences, which is tough, and you hopefully are quite good at math. But it's and to kind of speak to what we're going through right now, unfortunately with the pandemic, it is an industry that is more or less recession proof, which is nice from a job security standpoint.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what skill sets do you think are most important for someone in your industry? What sets the people that advance apart from those that maybe don't progress as much?
I think that drive obviously is something that is it's tough to put parameters around, or not parameters, but it's tough to explain exactly what drive is. But I think between drive, I think that something that is extremely important no matter what industry, it's time management. It's hugely important no matter what it is that you go to, whether you're in high school and then going into college and then going into the workforce. I mean, time management is really what's going to set you apart from everyone else, and knowing what is important to do right at this moment,
Mhm.
and what's not, and what you can not put off, but what you can do later. Effectively, what needs to be done right now, and how to do it most efficiently. And that's something that for everyone is constantly evolving, and something that you need to be very good at. On the insurance side specifically, I think that if you're a social person, I think that it helps a lot. But I think the great thing about our industry is really no matter who you are, say you're more of a technician and you like to be technical and really into the policy language and or underwriting risk, or you like to be the social person, you like to be out there talking to people. You can be a mix of those things, but you can also find whoever you are and whatever your like strong skill sets are, you can find a place within this
Mhm.
industry, and be successful.
That's good to know. Repeatedly, the communication skills, organization skills, and work ethic come up. And I've said it more than once, but I'll say it again. You cannot beat someone who has grown up and embraced the Midwest work ethic. Like it, it will trump a lot of other things if you're the kid that really has learned how to dig in and hustle and give 100%.
Absolutely. I mean, there's nothing to say that you have to be the smartest person, in the world. But I mean, a little smarts definitely helps. But if you're a hard worker and you put the time in,
Mhm.
it's going to pay dividends for sure. And I think that this isn't necessarily something that it's not necessarily a personal skill or trait, but I think that some, and kind of going back to the internship, I think what's also extremely important is aligning yourself with a company or an organization that's looking to help you grow. And so that's one of the things that I love the most is they put between the internship and then between we had like our externship effectively, like once we started where we had graduate development programs, it they put in so much time and money from a hard cost and soft cost perspective into us and into our growth from a knowledge standpoint, whether it's getting better from a technical standpoint or for sales. But it's great, and not only that, you want to be in organizations that allow all ages, but the new people to come in and get to know each other. Because if you can align yourselves with people that have similar ideals and similar aspirations, you can grow together throughout that. And I think that's hugely important.
I think that's a very good point, because you do want to look at things when you're in college or even when you're in high school and you're researching where you want to work or who you want to work for. What does their turnover rate look like? Like
Right.
what what um, what kind of environment or culture is at that business? And it's good, especially in in the field that you're in, that you want to work with people that are building each other up, and you can be competitive but not to the point that you're destructive to others,
Absolutely.
professional career. So I think that's really important. And I did read, because I was kind of curious when I interviewed Felipe, and
Mhm.
that you were in the same company.
Yeah.
Gallagher is one of the most ethical, it's been recognized for being a very
Hmm.
ethical company to work for. So I think there's a lot to be said for your work environment, for sure.
Absolutely.
And internships, that's a great way to figure out what's behind the persona on a website. Getting to actually get inside and work somewhere, that's the way you learn for sure.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely, it is.
those are really good tips.
Well, and to your point on about Felipe and us working at the same company. So he would, crazy enough, best friend, one of my best friends from childhood, and still to this day, he is technically now a client of mine, even though we're at the same company, which is wild.
That I did.
And yeah, and so he had done an internship with mothers. He was on like a law path at WashU and had done an internship with Mothers Against Drunk Driving in St. Louis the same time I did my first year in Chicago. And we were chatting about it, about mine, and he liked the idea of it and came up and interned. And here we are, almost 6 years later,
Yeah.
which is pretty unbelievable. And so, I mean, to that point, it's your friends can help you spark ideas like later on. And I think that one other thing that's extremely important to, and it's tough to see, and it's even tough to this day at 28 years old and almost 6 years into my career, whatever you go into originally, you can pivot, you can make a change if you want to. And I think that the best advice that I could give is to work hard at whatever it is that you decide to do and try to, brush up on all your skills, whether it be time management or anything else. Because really, in most cases, in most cases, you can really apply whatever it is you're doing first to something else. So you're sitting across the table from someone in an interview, or I guess on a Zoom call, even whatever it may be, and you can, in probably most all cases, apply what it is that you had first started out doing to what it is that you do want to do.
Very, very good advice. So, and segue into any other advice that you think would be important for a junior or senior in high school to know, or is there anything that you wish you would have known um, before you graduated from Marian High School?
Um, I think that just keeping an open mind and knowing that there is, again, 28 years old, and I still every single day learn about some new, career path or industry or whatever it may be. There's so much out there.
Mhm.
Um, and not just that, we were talking before the call about Chris Koshner, and Chris was in your classes as well. Chris is now a dentist, but
Yes.
I love talking to Chris about these things because he's got this business mindset, and he's wanting to open a practice and all this. And he's got this business mindset. So you can really apply business to so many things. And
True.
so business skills are extremely important. But I also think, on the other hand, and something that I wish I would have done more of early on is, if you want to go to school for finance, like I did, for instance, or whatever it is that, you want to go to, I think that you should also not pigeonhole yourself too much and only taking those kind of classes. I think those classes are great, but maybe philosophy classes or humanities classes or whatever it is, like definitely put time and effort and thought into your kind of general electives early on in school, because some of those things, they're soft skills and they're things that, help you think more logically, and can really open your mind to, and help you a lot in business.
Mhm.
And I also think that, between that and reading and just kind of intaking as much as you can, and listening to successful people, whether that be on podcasts. Tim Ferriss has a great podcast, which actually learned of the 4-Hour Work Week through you
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I've read most of his books, or have his books, and thumbed through. And while great, I think one of the best things that he has is that podcast of his, and he brings on world-class people from all different industries, and all, whether it be authors or business magnates, or was listening to one just recently by a guy by the name of Nick Cavaness out of Chicago, who started the Alinea restaurant, which is like one of the best restaurants in the nation. And he had started on the commodities exchange in Chicago, and then goes on to start one of the best restaurants in the world. And he was a philosophy major, and just listening to him, and just, it's just very interesting. You can kind of be all over the place. And just because you started down one path doesn't, again, back to my earlier comment, doesn't mean that you can't pivot a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Well, I do think it's important, no matter what field you're in, to be a well-rounded person, because
Absolutely.
no one, well, there might be a few people in the world, but most people don't go work in isolation, in a room with the door closed. You're going to be interacting with people, and
Mhm.
just being an interesting person, or making conversations. And like you said, sparking that creative thinking, and creative problem solving is so important. And
Absolutely.
the podcast, I'm glad you mentioned the podcast, because I have been trying, while we've been out of school, I've been sending out recommendations of podcasts for students to listen to. I don't
Mhm.
know whether they're taking advantage of it or not, but I feel like podcasts have really made a resurgence. And what else have you got to do right now? Like, this is a great.
Certainly.
I try to listen in my car, or when I'm getting ready for work in the mornings, where I
Yep.
might not be able to sit down and watch TV, but I listen to some that are about business, some that are about education, just different things. So I'm glad that you brought that up. That is a good tip. There are lots of ways to learn, and they
There
don't
are.
have to always be like a cumbersome sitting down at a desk. You can listen while you're running. So, or
Yep.
what
You can listen while you're running
I
or
really
folding
don't
laundry. Right. Folding laundry. I do not like folding laundry, but I'll pop
do.
these in and listen to a podcast or music, whatever it may be. And yeah, I think that's extremely important. And I think kind of what you're saying about, getting ready in the morning, I think that's something else that's extremely important, and it's tough to do when you're in college. It can be. Sorry, they're spraying my window right now.
Okay.
um
I just ordered my lunch while we were talking, so it's fine.
Literally just spraying right at my window. um is forming a routine early on. I think it's extremely important. It'll help you get through school, and it'll just help you get on the right track for the workforce later on. And I mean, and as you go through that, whether it's just starting the day by making your bed, which is something my mom and dad tried to instill early on, and of course I pushed back on as a young kid. But
Who does?
now at 20, right, and now at 28 years old, I see that that's important. Start the day off with a little win, and you're on the right track. But I think it's really important, because as time goes on, time becomes just more and more of a limited resource that you're going to want more of. And the more you can squeeze out of a day, the more you're going to get accomplished, and the more accomplished person you're going to be.
Yeah. And the more you do that, you become more inspired, and it becomes a way of life, and it encourages you to keep at it. So
Absolutely.
such wise advice from someone who's been out of school 10 years now. Can't believe it. But thank you so much, Nick, for sharing with my students today. I know that they're going to glean a lot from our discussion. And the next time you're home, you need to let me know,
Will do.
and we'll have dinner, or I'll bring you in so my students can talk to you face to face. That would be really
Yeah,
great.
that would be
Thank
great. And if anyone, and Hud, you've got my contact info. If anyone, is interested in insurance or anything like that, has any questions, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.